Welcome to Pebbles of Light. I'm your host, Ann Maxon. Have you ever felt a bit lost during the dark times of life's challenges? I know I have. I'm so grateful for those friends, loved ones, and even strangers that have provided me a pebble of light in the form of understanding and support. They've blessed my life, sometimes even more than they know. Seeing a little bright spot on the path has helped me to move forward when things are difficult. This show is here to celebrate those who add light to our lives. We will share some of their stories as well as ways in which to light the paths of others. Please come find me on Instagram and Facebook at Pebbles of Light, as well as at ammaxon.com. I love having the opportunity to interact with you and hear about those who've added a pebble of light to your path. Enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 21 of Pebbles of Light. I'm your host, Ann Maxon. Before we get into this episode with Emily Jones from Family Tech University, I want to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. Last episode's Pebble is from a fabulous interview with Kristen Coltrane, where she shared both her professional and personal experiences of being an LGBTQ ally. The Pebble was to choose one of the resources that Kristen shared in the show notes and try to gain some perspective and understanding. I've had a lot of wonderful feedback on that episode, and I'm so grateful for Kristen's vulnerability in sharing her personal experiences. If you haven't had a chance to listen, go check it out. Also, as of this recording, we are on summer break, so there won't be another episode out until July 6th. In the meantime, I'd love to hear about people that have placed a pebble of light in your path, and I think it would be really fun to share some of your messages in a future episode, so I've set up a recording process to do that. There's a link in the show notes, or you can go to speakpipe.com, speakpipe.com/pebbles of light to record a voice message, or you can record a voice memo on your phone and email it to me at podcast@annmaxon.com. That's Ann with an E, Maxson. Last, instead of a usual ad spot, I want to do a quick shout out to the program that our guest today, Emily, and her husband David have developed. Family Tech University empowers parents to nurture the internal filter, which is a child's best protection from the darker sides of tech. As parents, we all want to make sure that our kids will make the right decisions even after they've left the extra filters at home. Through the end of June, you can get 10% off with discount code Pebbles10. I have been so impressed with this program, and I'm sure you will love Emily's insights. I went into this interview thinking we would talk a lot about technology. We did that, but it felt like the underlying theme of our conversation, as well as the underlying theme of Family Tech University program, is more about inspired balance in parenting. You can feel Emily's goodness and faith through her message, and I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Thank you so much for being here today, Emily. I'm really excited to talk to you. We've talked a little bit over social media here and there, and I've loved getting to know you better. And as I've learned more about the work that you do with Family Tech University, I've wanted to learn more and more. So can we start out with you sharing a little bit about Family Tech University? What was the motivation to get it started and how it came to be?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ann. So the genesis of Family Tech University began really with our own family's need, what we perceived to be our own family's need. We were like any other parents where the oldest child starts asking for a phone, the dreaded question. And Dave is in the IT industry, so we were pretty aware of issues surrounding young people and technology. And we just looked at each other and we thought, so how are we going to prepare him for this massive level of technology? How will we prep him? How will we teach and prepare him in a really deliberate and organized way in order to deal with this level of technology? And that's where it began. And so, like any self-respecting parents of our day and age, we Googled like crazy to begin with to seek out, how do we do this? How do we parent this well? And what we found was a very strong environment of fear amongst parents and fear-based approaches that were being directed at parents about how to deal with these technologies. And that fear is unfortunately quite well-founded in that the problems are very real. They're very stark. And yet, as we investigated this, I remember this one evening we attended a conference that was centered on the parenting of technology. And we attended this conference, and it was just packed to the rafters with young parents who were concerned, very deliberate, good people. And you could cut the fear in the air with a knife. It was so strong. And we walked away from that conference, and it didn't sit right. It just did not, that element of terror in the parenting of these kind of things just did not sit well. And I think it was that night when we realized that there was something missing in the counsel that parents are being given on how to deal with these technologies. And that is that very few people are talking about how do we convince the child to want to be wise with technology for their own happiness, not because they've been lectured to or coerced or forced, but because they know and understand that their life will be better and happier. And so I think that's what propelled us to design a program for our own children, just a little humble PDF document at the time that was organized very deliberately, addressing all of the issues that we were most concerned about. Issues with social media, issues of dangers of pornography, how to achieve balance, how to achieve and seek stillness in life with all of these technologies. And so we put together what we called the internal filter workshop. And the intent of this workshop was to serve as kind of a driver's ed for the smartphone. We don't hand the keys to a car to a child before they've had proper training, right? And I think you and I would probably agree that the vehicle of a phone is just as perilous, perhaps, as an automobile. And so that deliberate, intensive training, we really felt like we can expect this of our kids. Before we hand them that technology, we can expect them to put in some work, to put in some study, and really demonstrate capacity before we hand this over. So we put this program together, and our oldest son navigated it, and then our second son navigated it. And it was so awesome, Anne. It was the most amazing experience. It was so impactful to watch them developing their own opinions, their owned knowledge and owned wisdom that was in their hearts. And it was so powerful and impactful that we started sharing it with neighbors and family, and it just kind of exploded from there. We started getting, by word of mouth, requests for it from back east and out of the state and out of our country even, and that's when we decided this really ought to be online. This ought to be available for more people because the approach is powerful. It's really powerful. So that's how it began.
Awesome. I think that's something unique about this generation of kids where you can't really tell them what to do. You have to help them see things from the correct perspective so that they get in their mind that it's what they want to do. They have to choose it themselves. And I
agree.
I'm glad that you incorporated that.
Yeah, I really agree. In fact, I think really the gospel teaches that we come to this earth for experience. We come to this earth to experience for ourselves and to choose and to learn for ourselves. And so I think that principle of agency and learning in that way, learning by our own study, learning by our own experience to be applied to the parenting of technology is powerful. And that's what really changes our children. It's not the lecturing, it's the presenting of them with truth and then helping them digest and apply that and really own it. That's where the power comes from. That's where the power comes. So
there's a great quote by Joy D. Jones from an address that was given at the Utah Coalition Against Pornography conference. And in it, she says, "Let's teach each family member to use technology wisely and positively from the start, to develop a moral mindset. Let's educate children in constructive ways to use technology for good. We can teach them to evaluate by asking themselves, will using this serve a good purpose?" And I think sometimes, like you said, if we go from the side of fear, the parents are doing a disservice to their kids because eventually they will have technology. That's just the way life is right now. And they'll get to the point where they don't have that, as you talk about, an internal filter to protect themselves. They'll just jump in and not know what to do. Have you seen that in others? And what would you say to those parents who are like, oh, I didn't do this the right way. How can I change gears?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that quote into this. And that is so perfectly sets up that whole concept of this kind of training. I think it is particularly powerful to just understand that kind of training, that kind of understanding. It is never too late. It is never too late to begin to place in front of young people truth. In fact, many people use the workshop that we offer as a precursor to phone ownership, but I would say far more people use it when the child already has a phone, which is fascinating. And the thing that comes about when that kind of training, any kind of training, not necessarily our workshop, any kind of training or teaching that the parent can employ even after the phone is in the ownership of the child sometimes actually grasps it even more powerful ways because they've had a peek at the impact that technology has on their lives. As an example, we had a young girl that went through our program, and she wrote to us and she said, I have had a phone for 2 years. And I have been engaged with social media. And then I took this course and got to the part on social media and read the materials, watched these videos. And I was nodding my head the whole time. Yes, I've seen that. I've seen social media's impact on my body image. I've seen the addictiveness of trying to gather the likes or that kind of feedback. And so it's never too late. And in some ways, those who've already had exposure to technology, they can understand even more how those teachings really apply and that those are real issues. Mm-hmm. So it's exciting. So don't lose hope. It's never too late.
And I think it's even something that as adults we can learn from, because I feel like we all have our struggles with technology in one way or another, whether it's trying to get likes or validation, I guess.
Yes.
External validation, or just wasting time scrolling and things like that.
So true. Totally agree.
We all have our struggles. But in what ways has technology been a blessing in your life? In what ways has it lightened your path?
I'm glad that you brought that up too, because I think that the blessings and the powers that come into our life because of technology are often overlooked with the more shrill voices that shout about the perils of it. Mm-hmm. I think technology enables us to serve, to lift, and to strengthen in very unique and powerful ways. I think that it's easy to demonize technology, and sometimes we can become so fearful that we forget that our young people are uniquely positioned to use this tool for power. I feel like our young people are so underestimated in their capacity to wield technology for good. And sometimes we talk so much about avoiding the bad, about fencing them in, about filtering, which is the filtering and the monitoring is so important. It really is. And our family is probably more conservative even than most in the granting of those technologies. But I think sometimes it's not as much about highlighting the bad, so much it is replacing negative behaviors, replacing what we could do with technology in a negative vein and fill our time with using it to lift and to help. In fact, even just last week, we actually had a little niece, just sweet little girl. She was in a sledding accident and she was badly hurt. She was taken by ambulance to the hospital. And of course, she is alone in the hospital with her parents. And the parents set up a Zoom call with the extended family. And on that screen are 20 to 30 of her cousins and aunts and uncles and her grandparents who are singing with her and loving her and encouraging her. And I marvel at the capacity that these technologies give us to come together and to lift and to help. They are such a blessing.
That is such a wonderful example. And I hope your niece gets feeling better soon and everything works out for her.
Thank you.
When you were talking about using it as a way to encourage, it reminded me of Elder Bednar talking about the importance of spreading goodness like a flood throughout the world using social media. And he also shared a quote that you and I were just talking about on Instagram, speaking of social media, that talked about that idea of not trying to control things, because this, in fact, is a good thing. He says, be careful to not regiment excessively the use of technology or proliferate endless rules and restrictions. Desired attitudes and righteous behavior cannot flourish in the soil of constantly constraining control and coercion. Your love, patience, teaching, and ministering will provide vital spiritual support as your children press forward on the straight and narrow path. And he goes on to talk about the importance of helping children learn that the only filter that successfully can overcome and avoid evil resides in the heart and mind of a faithful disciple of Christ. Only the companionship of the Holy Ghost can fortify sufficiently against the fiery darts of the wicked. And that's one of the things that really has stuck out to me about your program, is that it helps these people that go through the program kind of develop their own testimony. And in developing their own testimony of wise media use and wise technology use, they're able to just kind of build that fortification and recognize, okay, I have help. I have divine help in helping me know how to use this for good and also how to avoid bad things with it.
Absolutely.
How did that come into play for you? I mean, I can tell that your family is extremely spiritual, and I feel like that was probably just part of it. You said, if we're going to teach our kids something, especially something so important as this, we need to make sure to bring in a spiritual side to it.
Absolutely. Yes, it really is such a central element, because not only does it have play in the decision making of the child, that capacity to listen to that internal voice, that spirit, that voice that speaks to choose well. That is such a huge part of it. But it also, Anne, is so central to the parenting of technology. Unfortunately, it is so easy as a parent to feel like, I need a checklist for how to parent this. I need the steps. I need to know, at what age should I give them what thing? And it might not be the most popular answer, but the answer is that it is driven by that spirit. It is driven by that capacity by the parent to set aside fear, to take a deep breath, and to really listen to the promptings and the help that will come. God is so generous in helping us deal with these really complex issues. I appreciate you bringing up Elder Bednar's words, and I think with that idea of leaning away from coercion and force, I heard a gentleman share an analogy once that I was so powerful that really goes along with this idea. He asked kind of a rhetorical question. He said, if I were to hand you a plant and tell you to make the plant grow, could you do it? And of course, the answer is no. And his analogy is that growth and becoming strengthened is an internal process. And so when we view our children as living, breathing agents that are growing and changing, that growth cannot be forced upon an organism. It is an internal process. And so as parents, we view ourselves as gardeners. We view ourselves as the one who crafts the environment, who begins by preventing the accidental exposure with the digital filters, with the monitoring. However, we also take into account that particular plant. How much sun does the plant like? Some like more, some like less. What are the nutrients? We give the water, the soil. Our job as parents is to provide the environment most conducive to the growth of that particular plant. And so in the parenting of technology, we don't find ourselves guilt-ridden when, despite our best efforts, a child might choose occasionally differently. We must assign them and grant them the autonomy that they are the agent of growth. That is an internal process. And so we have to separate ourselves, concentrate on what we can control, what we can craft about that environment that presents them with truth, that helps them feel the spirit. That environment in our home, is it conducive to the spirit? And then we trust, we build, we strengthen them. We never stop talking. We never stop listening. And that's kind of the aim in the parenting of technology. We craft the environment, but we recognize and respect in them that agency to choose.
I love that idea about inspiration and thinking about the concept of our Heavenly Father loves these kids more than we do. And he knows them better than we do. And there might be different answers for different kids as we go to him for inspiration and how to help our children and inspire them and guide them on the right path. We know that he's not, if that's our question, he's not going to give us a wrong answer. He's going to bless us with as much as we need to guide that particular child.
It's so true.
I think it's interesting to think about it from that perspective and think about how he knows the good that they can do, and he wants to protect them as much as we do.
It's really true. And I think as parents, that may be one of the most inspiring things to witness is the parenting of our child by the Lord. He is miraculous. And in some ways, I have wondered if we are merely guides to point to him and that he is the true parent.
Yeah.
He truly is so generous. I don't know if there's a prayer that's more rapidly and generously responded to than that of a sincere parent on behalf of a child. It's beautiful.
Yeah. In what ways has your Family Tech University program changed the relationships in your home, whether between you and your husband or parent-child or between siblings? Please tell me it makes siblings get along, because my kids have some struggles.
We are as normal as you, Anne, with all of that. Absolutely. This program has been a powerful influence in our home on many levels. I think for one, a lot of people kind of focus in on, this program, they do it in a matter of weeks and then they're finished. But the real secret, the magic bullet, the real secret to the program is that what it actually does is inspires a habit of communication between the child and parent. And that's what's happened in our family. The overarching effect has been forming a habit of being able to talk about things, hard things, uncomfortable things, in a way that is disarming and very sincere. The mode of how they'll consume a powerful video or a powerful talk. And then the parent asks, well, what did you think about that? And the child expresses those opinions and they become theirs. And I think that that's really changed the dynamic of our parenting in just setting up that habit of respect. I care about that child's opinion. I respect the processes that are happening in them, the things that the Spirit is bringing to their mind as they consume those materials. So I think it's brought us on a plane with our children of trust and respect. I think also it's impacted my marriage relationship. I am the content creator and the writer, and my husband is the technical genius behind it. And I think we've seen in living color what happens in a marriage when differing opposing strengths come together in order to bring about goodness, that I can work and labor over this product, but without his expertise, not a soul would see it. It's been a really fun shared passion between us to provide this and make it available to help families. So it's been a great thing.
I love that idea of it opening up those conversations. We were talking a little bit at the beginning before we started the interview about how I just recently learned from multiple sources now that frequently first exposure to pornography is between 8 and 11. And my kids are right in that age group. And so one of the things that has struck me is the importance of having those conversations. And we talk a lot about sharing the gospel in normal and natural ways, but I think we need to have those conversations as well in normal and natural ways. So it isn't coming in and sitting down and say, okay, kids, we're having our yearly FHE about pornography, and you check the box and then you walk away. But making sure that you're having conversations all the time so that when there is an issue, it isn't a big deal to come to mom and dad and talk to them about it, that it's just part of the normal and natural conversations that you have within your home.
I love that, Anne. I love your application of that phrase, in normal and natural ways. It's more powerful that way. And it feels like you're not just sequestering yourselves to a bedroom and locking the door and having a big talk, that it's integrated with life. It's on the carpool ride home, and it's that chat before bed. And hey, look what I found on my phone. Look at this article that I just found about social media. What do you think about this? I love that. I love that you brought that up.
In what ways has deliberate technology use in your home helped you to recognize those pebbles of light in your path?
I think, Anne, I would say that the deliberate use of technology leaves room for God to speak in life. And I don't mean that when we it's always when we turn the tech off, then he speaks, because I think he can speak through it as well. And so it is in the deliberate choosing of how we consume online. In the same way that we would go to a buffet and select what things to put on our plate, choose what we consume. I think in the same way we can curate the online experience, both for us and our children. We can teach them to curate what things about this technology are uplifting me. Let's keep those. And what parts of this technology are sucking my time, are numbing my spirit, that we remove. And so I think that I don't know that we ever achieve a perfect balance, but I think that by the Spirit, as we continue to very deliberately curate the way that we intentionally use technology, that the Lord puts line upon line those pebbles of light into our way. I think that in the challenges that we face, and technology is a huge one for our generation, the Lord is generous in planting those pebbles of understanding when we seek them. And so we can assume, we can expect and know that as we face that challenge and seek Him, that those pebbles of light will come into our lives. A person, a quote, an idea, a prompting, that line upon line, those pieces of light will lead us through that challenge. And I really believe in the Lord's generosity and His goodness and mercy. He does not leave us alone in dealing with these technologies, that He will answer and bring those things to our attention.
I appreciate that you talk about how we have to seek Him. We have to be active in looking at that. One other thing I thought of when you were mentioning that was you guys were highlighted on family rules for BYU TV. Is that correct?
That's right.
As part of that, part of going through the process of Family Tech University was to just sit in a park and watch how technology impacts other people. And I feel like that is such a big thing for these young people to realize, to just sit back, watch how technology can impact others, and build that recognition of your relationship with technology and how it affects your other relationships if you are careful and if you aren't careful with your technology use.
Yes, it really, and that is the most awesome experience for any age person. And it's kind of a stepping back. It's almost like taking a bird's eye view. You can do this with your kids. You sit in some public place, go to the library, go anywhere, even watch people in a grocery line where they're lining up to check out. It is so amazing to step back and just observe the way technology is impacting for good or ill. And great experience. I think it helps you kind of pull back, recognize the impact on not only yourself individually, but on society at large, and just what might we be missing when we bury ourselves in that technology, when there are opportunities to connect eyeball to eyeball with our fellow human beings.
Yeah.
It's a very eye-opening experience.
We used to talk to people in the checkout aisle, right? Yeah. We used to, kind of make some small talk. And now everybody just grabs their phone in order to pay, because that's how you pay sometimes. But
it's so true.
I have 2 crowdsourced questions, and you'll probably be able to guess who they're from. So I should clarify that I can remind you that I can edit anything out.
Sure.
Are you nervous? So, one question is, can you explain to me what a Nintendo conference is? I've heard that they were a thing in your childhood home.
Oh, yes. Oh, this is so hilarious. So I am not ashamed to admit that I loved video games as a kid. Totally loved Nintendo. Loved it. It's such a hilarious little thing but I'm the oldest. I've got 3 younger sisters, and it was like a big deal at Christmas time. What game are we going to ask for Christmas? And I was the oldest, and I threw my weight around like you can't believe. I'm sure you got an earful from my sisters, but we would sit down and have this big conference to decide which game we were going to choose. It's hilarious. It is so hilarious.
So the next question is also from your sister, Sarah. She said, in what ways did your mom influence the ways in which you mother your own children?
Oh, Anne, I could speak for a lot longer. I could speak for a half hour on this. So my mother If you can picture this great woman, she is 4'11" and 3/4 inches high. That's how tall she is. And she was always very proud of that 3/4. My mother raised us with a powerful sense of humor. I think I was probably most impacted by her capacity to recognize within us our goodness and our power, and recognition of the process of growth that we were in. I can remember times, especially as a teenager, where I would mouth off or do something, and she seemed to have this kind of innate understanding when I was doing something that was really not me. That was more a symptom of my teenagerness, but was not really who I was or what I had meant to say. And I remember her ability to look beyond those moments, to look away, to step back, and to constantly emphasize the strength that she saw in me, the capacity that she saw in me. And I think that confidence, there is something so powerful when you grow up genuinely knowing that your parent thinks you are a wonderful human being and is able to see past the periphery of the growth process that you're in, recognize it as a journey, and not be alarmed or concerned, and know you're going to get this. You didn't really mean what you just said, and you're going to get there. And I think that there's a great power in our, when one grows up in an arena where the parent, you can just sense and feel in everything that they do and say that they have a belief in you, a trust in you, and give you room to make those choices and come to that understanding by your own experience. She was magnificent. My mom is a magnificent mother.
Oh, that is wonderful. And that idea of loving you not only for who you are, but for who you can become.
Yes. That is the mark of a great parent, I think. And I think that's a gift that God gives to parents, that ability to see beyond what's there now and what the possibilities and potential are. So powerful.
There's an excellent talk by Henry B. Eyring called The Law of Increasing Returns. It's a BYU, I think it's a BYU Idaho devotional, maybe, or it's a BYU speeches. And he talks about that idea of short crops and long crops, and how parenting is a long crop. You don't see the fruits of your labors for a long, long time. But he talks about how sometimes you can get a little dividend. And, what for me, sometimes it's just the other day I'd posted about my oldest son after weeks of my boys in kind of a heightened level of bickering. On Saturday night, he offered to sleep on the floor because they do sleepovers on the weekends in each other's rooms. And on Saturday night, he offered to sleep on the floor in his own room and let his younger brother have his bed because his younger brother wasn't feeling very well. And even just sometimes you'll get a picture of your kids standing there together, and you can look at that picture and you can imagine what it's going to look like in 15 or 20 years. And you're just like, okay, they've got it. And I believe in them. And I know that God believes in them, and he's going to help them get to that spot that he wants them to be.
Beautiful. Beautifully said.
Our last question on Pebbles of Light is always the same. The purpose of Pebbles of Light is to celebrate those relationships that have helped to brighten our path and in turn help us light the paths of others. So can you share one or two people that have placed a pebble of light in your path?
I would have to say, to begin with, my children. I think that they have in many ways been the kind of the laboratory experience of really seeing what happens when people are presented with truth, as they practice it, as they nurture that in themselves and have it nurtured by their environment. I credit them with really teaching us in a very, very real way these principles that Dave and I have come upon in our seeking about this particular realm of life, of technology. And I think in many ways, the things that our children have taught us have been broadened out to bless other people. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for the childlike humility with which they have approached things and even participating in some of these things where they couldn't see the purpose or the meaning, but had the trust in order to engage and practice and then gain the blessings that come from accepting those things. Secondly, I always come back to the Lord in his generosity and willingness to bless us with light, to bless us with understanding in the challenges and the complex things that we deal with in this life. He is so generous and perfect in his parenting and so responsive to the seeker. I take great comfort in the giver of those pebbles of light, I should say, that he is the giver of all of those things, and just recognize and acknowledge his hand in bringing about, whether they're people or ideas or revelation, guidance, capacity to shoulder hard things, all of those pebbles of light. He is the great giver of those things. And I love that you refer to them as pebbles of light, because I picture sort of a Hansel and Gretel leading someone back home, right? And I think that is the intent of his goodness and those tender mercies that he bestows, and give honor to him.
Thank you so much for being here. I really have loved this conversation with you. Where can people find out more about Family Tech University?
You can find us on familytechuniversity.com. You can also find us, our handle on Instagram is Family Tech University, and the handle is the same on Facebook. So all of those places, we would love to interface with you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your light and all the help that you do to bring more light to the families all over the world.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for having me.
I absolutely love that interview with Emily. I felt like we could have talked for hours, and I'm so grateful for her taking some time to share her insights with all of us. This week, I have 2 pebbles. I have one that's focused on technology. That is to take some time to assess your personal use of technology. Maybe try the activity that we mentioned in the interview of going to a park and watching the role that technology plays in others, and figure out how you can apply that to your own use of technology. If you are a parent, I have an additional pebble for you. Take some time this week to think about what you are grateful for about your kids. Is it the way that they make you laugh? Their determination that sometimes manifests itself as stubbornness? Is it their kindness, their go-getter attitude? Is it the way that they give you a sweet hug every morning? For me, focusing on gratitude in regards to parenting has helped me to feel inspired as to how to help and support that particular child. Check the show notes for resources including the talks and quotes mentioned in the episode, and links including how to find out more about Family Tech University. Don't forget that through the end of June, you can get 10% off with the discount code Pebbles10. There's also a link there to leave me a message talking about who has placed a pebble of light in your path. And last I heard, there are still tickets available for Salt Gathering that I'll be speaking at in September, but prices go up on June 18th. So head over to saltgathering.com and use code ANN10 for $10 off. Again, that's Ann with an E. I'll be back in July with an encore of episode 6. It is an interview with Tessa and Jameis Buck called Taking a Step into the Dark, How to Find Your Path and Have the Courage to Follow It. They share their experience of doing their best to find what God would have them do, and then having the courage to move forward with it. I absolutely love their story. It leaves me feeling uplifted and empowered every time I hear it, so I'm excited to share it again. Keep looking for the bright spots on your path, and I'll be back in a few weeks. Thank you for tuning in today. More than what has been said, I hope that you've been able to listen to your thoughts and feelings. Maybe you've thought of someone who's brought light to your path. Let them know of your gratitude. Maybe you've been inspired as to how to add some light to your own path or the path of another. Do your best to act on those feelings and impressions. I would love to learn more about you and your experiences. Please come find me on Instagram and Facebook at Pebbles of Light. If you like what you hear, please review so we can spread this light further. You can find show notes and more resources at annmaxon.com. Until next time.